Jahmyr Gibbs, not Bijan, not Brees Hall, should be your number one running back in your Dynasty leagues. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. No Kate Madjuk today. She's going to be out for the next couple of days, but she will be back on Wednesday when we do our show with Matt Williamson, so make sure you tune in for that. But on today's show, we're going to break down some of the biggest winners and losers coming out of Week 8. And I want to start in Detroit with the Lions. I mean, obviously the Lions are massive winners. They win 52-14 over the Titans. They scored 35 first half points in this game, 17 points in the third quarter. For the second time in, I believe, second time in 3 weeks. Hendon Hooker actually saw some playing time in this game, so that was fun. But I wanted to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think pretty easily is the most valuable dynasty asset on this team. And one of the things that we've been trying to figure out over the last couple of weeks is how do we stack Jahmyr Gibbs up with Bijan Robinson and Brees Hall? If you remember correctly, earlier on in this offseason, Christian McCaffrey was the clear-cut RB1 in Dynasty leagues. He's obviously fallen down now. Brees Hall back up to RB1. Bijan Robinson not far away at RB2. Gibbs is at RB3, and there's a little bit of a distance between those three and ADP. Again, I'll just go over them really quickly. Brees Hall, 7.75. Bijan Robinson, 9.0. Jahmyr Gibbs, 10.75. I don't think that's right. I think Jahmyr Gibbs should be at the top. Now, I want to preface this by saying that Jahmyr Gibbs is not an every down running back in the same way that Brees Hall and Bijan Robinson in theory are. I know Bijan Robinson splits a lot of time with Tyler Algier, and I know Braylon Allen gets work with the Jets. Those guys both have bigger bodies. I think they can handle more touches. But I actually like what the Lions are doing here with Gibbs, right? He's managed to be effective despite limited touches in this game. 11 carries for 127 yards and a touchdown. Actually, he only got one target in this game for 6 yards, but again, 130 yards and a touchdown. On the season, Jahmyr Gibbs has scored 7 touchdowns. He's got over 700 yards. So he's giving you 100 yards and a touchdown per game on average. Which there's only a couple running backs in the NFL that can do that. I think the reason why I'm so bullish on Gibbs is because of the way the Lions are using him. A lot of times when we see running backs that are being drafted in the first round and, really inside the top 15, those are guys who get a bunch of touches earlier in their careers. And by the time they get to the end of their rookie contracts or, on that second part of the new deal they get, right? They just aren't the same player physically. Again, if you're watching with us on YouTube, you can see I've got Cowboys jerseys in my background. I watched this happen with Ezekiel Elliott, who got 1 million carries as a rookie, was suspended in year 2, missed 6 games. Year 3 looked really good, but by year 4, he just wasn't the same player physically. And then by year 5, he was done as a workhorse back, right? Like he wasn't that same guy. Has happened to Todd Gurley. The list goes on and on, right? A lot of these running backs get so many touches in a short period of their career that they're just unable to remain as efficient as they get older. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, it seems like the Lions have a pretty good plan here, right? They want him to be somewhere between 13 and 17 touches a game. A lot of touches that are on the perimeter where he can get out of bounds. And he's able to be productive and stay healthy doing that, which I think is going to prolong his peak. Maybe not prolong his career. Like, I don't think he's going to play 10, 12, 15 years or anything like that, but prolong his peak. And that's what we care about in Dynasty is how many years can you be a top 5 running back? We already saw it last year. We're seeing it again this year. And with this offense, with this structure, and with the way the Lions are using him, I don't see any reason why he can't continue to do this for the next 3 or 4 years. Compare that to some of the other dynasty running backs that are being drafted, like right around Jahmyr Gibbs, like Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, obviously Christian McCaffrey. Like those guys are all had major injuries. They've had a bunch of work on their body already, a lot of touches. I just don't see that being an issue for Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe he's not busting off 70-yard runs every week like he did this week against the Titans, but I do think the Lions have a good vision here of how to use Jahmyr Gibbs the most effectively now, but also how to keep him healthy so that he can be productive when we get into the 2025, 26, 27 season. So for my money, I like Jahmyr Gibbs as the top running back in Dynasty right now. He's outproducing Bijan Robinson. He's outproducing Breece Hall, and he's not getting the same work, and he's on a better offense. I love me some Jahmyr Gibbs. I do want to mention on the Lions offense, it was a little bit of a weird game in which they scored 52 points. They scored 35, I believe, in the first half of this game. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 1 catch. He did score a touchdown. David Montgomery scored 2 touchdowns, including a passing touchdown. But to me, the story of this game was Sam Laporta, who Kate and I have been very critical of over the last couple of weeks. Only 3 combined targets in the last 2 games. He led the Lions in targets this week with 6. He led them in catches with 6, got into the end zone. This was the most that they've used him all season long. To my naked eye, I don't think he looks the same physically. Even in this game, I thought he looked quite a bit slower than we saw at any point last year. But it was encouraging to see him being more involved in the offense. And the hope is that that can continue going forward throughout the rest of the season. I have my doubts, especially once you get in some of these tighter games. Again, Amon-Ra St. Brown did basically nothing in this game outside of a touchdown. Jameson Williams is serving a suspension because of a PED incident. He'll be back after the Packer game this week. I have some concerns about Sam Laporta's role, but it was nice to see him be more active. There are going to be games coming up where the Lions aren't going to put up 52 points, but are going to be much better for their fantasy performances, right? You're not going to get the touchdowns on defense and special teams. At one point in this game, I believe the Lions had 35 points and Jared Goff had like 8 net passing yards. So it was a weird game from a fantasy perspective, but if you had Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, you're certainly not upset with that result. So I'm buying just about everybody in this Lions offense, especially Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think right now for me is the clear-cut RB1 in Dynasty leagues. Let's talk about some of the biggest losers coming out of Week 8. And, of course, we've got to talk about Anthony Richardson, who, once again, can't complete a pass. We will talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get action in sports or on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. Like, for example, Jordan Mason left the game in the first quarter last night. He did not return. Your lineup would stay alive if you had him in there. Sign up today and get $50 off instantly after you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the PrizePicks app. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down some of the biggest winners and losers coming out of Week 8. And again, we need to talk about Anthony Richardson in this game. Now, he gave you 45 yards on the ground, which you'll love. He threw a touchdown, a nice ball to Josh Downs, but 10 of 32 for 175 yards and a touchdown, one interception. At one point in this game, Anthony Richardson was 2 of 16 for like 82 yards. He hit a deep bomb to Josh Downs. He is now completing only 44% of his passes this year, 50% for his career. You look at the quarterbacks in the last 40 years that have completed less than 50% of their passes in a season, and the list is pretty grim. Like Tim Tebow's on that list, a bunch of guys that you've never heard of that never got an opportunity. I don't think we are in danger yet of the Colts benching Anthony Richardson because they are 4-4. They're still in the playoff hunt. This was a very winnable game. They had a very good chance to beat the Texans in Houston. But I do have some concerns that this isn't a long-term solution for the Colts. And if it's not going to work out in Indianapolis, he's just not going to get that many other shots to be a starting level quarterback. He was being drafted as a top 6, top 7 dynasty quarterback going into the season. That's dropped all the way down to quarterback 14. And that was with October ADP. I've got to imagine at the end of this week, once we get some November ADP, he's going to be behind quarterbacks like Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, Geno, like guys that are just playing and completing passes. He's going to get ahead of he's going to go behind because this has gotten to a point where it's so bad in Indianapolis that you wonder, can you even build a functional offense out of him with him at quarterback? Like, I really love the talent of Anthony Richardson, but the idea of Richardson is a lot better than what the player is right now. And I think one of the biggest issues is that he's actively hurting the value of everybody else on this offense, not named Jonathan Taylor, right? Like Alec Pierce, 1 catch for 11 yards and 4 targets. Adonai Mitchell, 1 catch for 9 yards and 4 targets. Your receiver that they paid a bunch of money to this offseason, Michael Pittman, 1 catch for 16 yards on 6 targets. At some point, these receivers are going to go to Shane Steichen and be like, hey, put Joe Flacco in, right? Like he just gives us the better chance to win. Flacco's got a whole bunch of issues. He doesn't help the run game. His release is slow. The decision-making is not great, but he can get the ball to the receivers. And if these receivers are unhappy with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, it's going to be really hard for this offense to function. So I am really concerned about Anthony Richardson's dynasty value. I don't see any way that you can take him as a top 20 quarterback right now. Some of the quarterbacks that were being drafted well below him, like Drake May, Michael Penix, I would rather have all of those guys right now just because there's some hope there. And I'm losing hope every single week in Anthony Richardson. This has gotten to be to a point where I'm pretty concerned here. Let's talk about some other losers coming out of Week 8. And I want to go to Seattle. This one's tough. This was a big spot for Jackson Smith-Njigba. No DK Metcalf. This was a game where Seattle was down almost the entire game. It was 14-3 at halftime. It was 31-3 going into the fourth quarter. And Jackson Smith-Njigba could only earn 7 targets in this game. Now, he did catch 6 passes for 69 yards, but I think you were hoping for more, right? In a game where this, it was a very favorable game script for JSN, It was a favorable outcome in the terms of like no DK Metcalf. This should be the game where he gets a bunch of targets. That didn't happen. Pretty concerning there. I wanted to also talk about the Saints coming out of this one. Chris Olave back into lineup. He did look awesome, 8 for 107, but everybody else in this offense was atrocious. Kendra Miller, 3 carries for 16 yards, had to leave the game early. None of the other receivers stepped up at all. I think that Saints situation is going to be one that we want to avoid moving forward, as is Carolina. Carolina is another really rough one. Bryce Young, 24 for 37, 224 yards. Did have a nice touchdown to Xavier Legette early in the game, but that was basically all that Legette did. Their leading receivers coming out of this one, Jalen Coker, 4 for 78, David Moore, 4 for 39. You can't start anybody on the Panthers offense with any kind of reliability. Even somebody like Chuba Hubbard, 15 for 56, didn't do a lot in this one. We're used to Hubbard having much better performances. That was a concern. And then I want to go over to the Bears. Caleb Williams, 10 of 24, 131 yards, did not play particularly well in this game. I'm not overly concerned, but I do think in the short term, if you're hoping that this offense is going to provide week-to-week stability, it just isn't there. The offensive line continues to be a major problem for Chicago. They were rotating guards in this game. Now, the good news is DeAndre Swift looked awesome. 18 carries for 129 and a touchdown. I thought this was his best game as a Bear. But man, this passing game, as much as I love Caleb Williams and as much as I thought he was getting better week in and week out, I think we're going to see some of these clunkers mixed in there as they're trying to figure out their offense. And here's the other thing. Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator for the Bears, I don't think he's going to be the OC here next year. There were some awful play calls in this one, including a goal line carry with an offensive guard who, of course, fumbled the ball right away. This offense really did next to nothing for 3/4 of this game, 0 points in the first half. I think we're going to get a new look offense in 2025. And what does that look like with Caleb Williams, with Rome Odunze, with DJ Moore? I don't know. I can't imagine it would be worse, but you never know. So I feel like a lot of these players in Chicago are just holds, and just hold them until we figure out what this offense is going to look like going forward. But all in all, just a rough outing for Chicago. It's going to be better, but this was a prime matchup, right? Washington defense has been exposed all season long, and to only score 15 points and to only complete 10 passes in this game is pretty discouraging. Let's talk about some young receivers that absolutely showed out in week 8, including Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey, who we talked about pretty extensively on Wednesday's podcast with Matt. Both players had outstanding days on Sunday. Let's break it down next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I absolutely love Game Time. Game Time is the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go see my favorite teams play or go to live events. Game Time Picks helps you filter out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many great features on Game Time, but one of my favorites is the panoramic view that you're going to get of your seats before you buy. When I go to like comedy events, right, I want to have good seats where I can actually see the comedian. I don't like to be off to the side. I'd rather be actually higher up than down low. So again, you're going to be able to see exactly what your seats look like before you buy. Plus, they have all-in pricing that shows you your total upfront, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Listen, those guys are covering the Titans and the Jags on their own respective shows, so they know what kind of heartbreak I'm talking about right now with my Cowboys. So go check them out wherever you get your podcast. They're free and available on all platforms. All right, let's talk about some young receivers that played well on Sunday. And I want to start with Keon Coleman. I think there were some that were concerned when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper, including myself, that he would be phased out of the offense. That they would just run their offense through Amari, Khalil Shakir, and then Dalton Kincaid. That hasn't totally been the case. No, Shakir did have a big day, 9 for 107 on 10 targets. Amari Cooper just one catch for 3 yards on 2 targets. In fact, one of the targets that he got was intercepted. Wasn't a very good route from Amari. But Keon Coleman, 5 for 70 and 1 touchdown on 7 targets. He's really started to play well over the last couple of weeks. His most recent games, 5 for 70, 4 for 125, 1 for 49, and a touchdown. Hasn't been the most consistent, but you're seeing the flashes of why the Bills wanted to draft him. He had an unbelievable touchdown over Riq Woolen in the end zone where Josh Allen put the ball up high. Riq Woolen's a 6'3" corner, by the way, and Keon Coleman just went and got it. He's 21 years old. There's still a lot of refinement in his game that needs to be done. But man, the traits and the tools are so clear and obvious. I'm excited about Keon Coleman. This was not somebody that I loved pre-draft, but I think with Josh Allen, this is a really, really good fit. And it seems like he's starting to figure things out. And you can get him relatively cheap right now in dynasty leagues going into the month of October. He was being drafted like wide receiver 35, wide receiver 36. I think that's going to go up, but you could get, Jackson Smith-Njigba was being drafted significantly ahead of him. I would rather just have Keon Coleman. Jordan Addison, wide receiver 28. I would rather have Keon Coleman. Chris Godwin, obviously now that he's injured. Deebo Samuel, Tank Dell, all being drafted ahead of Keon Coleman. And I just would rather have him over any of those other guys. Another receiver I want to talk about is Ladd McConkey, who has missed some time with injuries this year, but did have a breakout performance against the Saints. 6 targets, 6 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's actually scored 4 touchdowns on the year. One of the things that I really like about Ladd is he is pretty involved in this offense. He's had at least 40 receiving yards. And again, that's not a super big bar to clear, right? But at least 40 receiving yards in 5 straight games. He's catching 4 to 5 to 6 passes every single week. And you can see that the trust in him from Justin Herbert is starting to grow. One of his touchdowns in this game was on a 60-yard bomb where Herbert just threw him a jump ball and he went and got it, which is weird to see a 5'11" receiver go win a jump ball and make a play after the catch, but that's what he did. And I thought he looked unbelievable. So I still think the Chargers need to add a weapon on the offense. I wouldn't be surprised if they do it before the deadline, but I do think there's a chance Ladd McConkey going forward is somebody who gives you, 6 for 70, 7 for 82, like a lot of these type of games going, with Justin Herbert getting healthier, with Ladd McConkey getting healthier. I'm all in on this Chargers offense. We also want to mention Marvin Harrison Jr., who we talked about on last week's show. Kate and I actually suggested that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a massive buy right now, just because he had a couple poor performances, and maybe you could get him a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit cheaper than what his earlier value suggested. I think that buy window is gone after this game. 6 for 111 and a touchdown, including an unbelievable touchdown grab. Cardinals started to use him more on dig routes and over routes where they could use his size in the middle of the field. This is the best he's looked all year. And I know this Miami secondary isn't great, but still there's some pretty good corners on this roster. For Marvin Harrison to put up that type of performance in a game that the Cardinals went on the road and won on short rest against 6 days. They played on Monday night, a late Monday night game, went to Miami, played a 1:00 game. I was really encouraged by what I saw from Marvin Harrison Jr. So again, not like we're changing anything here in terms of his dynasty value. He was still being drafted as a top 6 guy going into the month of October. Nothing has changed there at all. It was just nice to see him play well. The last guy I want to mention is somebody that Kate mentioned on our promotion commotion last week, and that's Cedric Tillman, who before Sunday had never had a receiving touchdown in his NFL career, but now has put together two really, really solid games. Last week against the Bengals, he saw 12 targets, caught 8 of them for 81 yards. This week against the Ravens, 7 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown. It seems like Cedric Tillman is now the X receiver in this offense, the guy that's going to get the most targets. And with Jameis Winston installed as quarterback for the rest of the season, I would expect Tillman to get a pretty heavy dose of targets. And again, Amari Cooper's gone. And this is one of the reasons why the Browns made that trade. Not only did they do well getting a third-round pick for Amari Cooper, but they wanted to open up snaps for some of their younger receivers. And Tillman is one of those players. Before the Amari trade, Tillman had 5 targets in the team's first 6 games of the season. Over the last 2 games, 21 combined targets. Like, they want him to earn these opportunities and to go out and make plays, and he's delivered so far. Cedric Tillman is a receiver that was basically being undrafted in most dynasty leagues. He was being, you're talking about somebody who is wide receiver 110, like almost unrosterable. And now I think for the remainder of the 2024 season, at least, with Winston at quarterback, you're getting somebody who could put up wide receiver 3-ish numbers, just depending on the matchup. He's somebody who was really productive at Tennessee before he got injured, put up big numbers there with Hendon Hooker. Now he's in an offense that I think is just going to throw the ball a lot over the remainder 8-9 games of the season. I think Cedric Tillman is a sneaky buy if you can snag him in your dynasty leagues. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Follow my co-host Kate Majuk at Kate Majuk. Again, she'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be back tomorrow breaking down this Giants Steelers Monday Night Football game, talking to you about some waiver wire pickups and getting you ready for Week 9. We'll see you right back here on Tuesday.